They had men dig their own graves and then go inside of the grave, and then they buried them alive, and they documented this in videos. That a militia orchestrated by a foreign entity can come in, take over a country, annihilate its people, replace its population, extract its resources in levels that never before seen. The UAE's role here is one of orchestrating this genocide. Not only the UAE being being the chief arms provider, but being the operational hub for the RSF, and in fact giving direct coordination and orders. The RSF made good on their promise that they would go into El-Fasher and that they would kill every living soul in El-Fasher. And that's exactly what they did.
Peace and blessings, everybody. I am your brother, Orina, all the way from the motherland, all the way from Kenya, Nairobi, nation's capital. And today, she's back again to sell Africa to Africans. We are trying to push and put a lot of pressure on what's happening in Sudan. The Sudan genocide is still going on. El-Fasher is still going on. RSF is still sadly going on. And there's little pressure being put in international media, in African media, but it's okay. That's why we are here. That's why us independent platforms are here, because I mean, that's why Pan-African independent platforms are here, to push stories like this, because we are all one. And even if I'm in Kenya, I don't care. I'm a Pan-Africanist. Sudan people are my brothers and sisters. And today we have a daughter of Sudan again, Suad Abdel Aziz. Suad, how are you doing? How are you doing?
I'm okay, brother Orion. I have unfortunately, very tragic updates since we last spoke, but I'm doing okay.
Well, wow. I think we can, before we go to the updates, I just want to know how, because I know you have people there, and before you give us updates on Sudan, how are your people doing? I mean, when was the last time you spoke to your people, and how are they doing in Sudan right now?
Yeah, my family is okay. Thank God, alhamdulillah. There's many family friends in Darfur and in the areas around where the RSF has now taken over, that we're very worried about, and we're trying to just, all we can do at this point for those loved ones is prayer, and continue to tell the stories of what's happening, but it's not a great situation.
Oh my, okay. So what are the updates? Last time we spoke, a lot has happened in regards to the Sudan topic. First of all, I'd like us to, okay, give us your updates before I go, before we talk about why and how the RSF managed to arrange a meeting in the US. But before we go there, just give us your updates. How is Sudan doing right now as we speak?
So the last that we spoke, we talked, we discussed the RSF's plan of taking over the west of Sudan, and that would be their stronghold in order to take over the remainder of Sudan, to completely take over Sudan and completely destabilize the country. And in order to do so, we spoke about how they explicitly, RSF commanders and higher-ups explicitly stated that they would commit a campaign of annihilation in order to take over these regions. And so for over a year now, they have laid out their plan that they're going to take over the west of Sudan, and in order to do so, they would first need to take over El-Fasher, the capital of North Darfur, where it is the most populated region as far as civilians go, because that is the capital. and they would need to do this in order to strategically begin to take over other regions within the West. And they announced that this would be the capital of their parallel government, this government that the militia, the RSF militia, is attempting to create in order to subsume the larger Sudanese government and become the official government of Sudan. This is their goal. So for over a year, they said they were going to do this. They created the kill box around El-Fasher, that Yale Humanitarian Research Lab dubbed a kill box. It is trenches, physical trenches around the city. And the city was made up of 1 million people. And from the beginning of the year until only 2.5 weeks ago, the population was 250,000 people, 250,000. And about 2.5 weeks ago, so they starved out this population for months and did not allow people out, did not allow civilians out, did not allow food in. And many Sudanese civil society groups, our organization, others, UN experts, special rapporteurs for the UN had been screaming and warning of what was to come if the RSF is able to continue its plan, its stated plan, with impunity. And those screams were not heard. So 2.5 weeks ago, the RSF made good on their promise that they would go into El-Fasher and that they would kill every living soul in El-Fasher. And that's exactly what they did. And this was within a 5-day span. That this is one of the largest mass killing events in the 21st century. In a 5-day span, they effectively annihilated a whole city's population, 250,000 people. And the reason why you may have, your audiences may have seen footage around this, because leading up to this, they, of course, blocked all telecommunications so that there would not be, civilians would not be able to broadcast what was happening to them. They killed and kidnapped, they killed most journalists and kidnapped some. They kidnapped Muammar Ibrahim, the main journalist that was operating in El-Fasher at the time, who remained in El-Fasher despite having many opportunities to leave because he wanted to document what was happening in his home. And they kidnapped him and are now torturing him. So there's a campaign to free Muammar. They killed other journalists. They killed any prominent internet personalities leading up to this siege, this annihilation campaign. And then within this 5-day span, they went door to door, killed every person in every house, door to door. They went to the major hospitals and killed all patients within the hospitals. Some of the doctors they held for ransom, and some of the doctors continue to be held as well. This was within one of the most gruesome documented massacres was of the Saudi maternity hospital. This is pregnant women and children that were all slaughtered. The entirety of all of the patients in the hospital were all slaughtered. So how do we know about this? The videos that many of you have seen online, those are the only ways in which we have firsthand footage of what is happening is through videos of RSF fighters themselves. They're documenting their own crimes. And that's only a small piece of what's happened in El-Fasher. And so within the first 2 days, the fighters, many fighters and commanders of the RSF were putting out this video footage on their Facebook pages, and then it began to circulate all over the internet. And this footage they were proud of. This is footage of the patients that they were massacring at the hospitals. This is footage of they dug they had men dig their own graves and then go inside of the grave, and then they buried them alive, and they documented this in videos. They documented rapes, they documented the torture that they did, especially targeting women for this type of torture. The atrocities that the RSF committed in El-Fasher within that 5-day span. I want to emphasize that they did this in 5 days. And after the second day, that when the footage began to be internationally circulated, and there was this, for the first time, seemingly, this international outrage of attention of what was happening in Sudan, because there's this footage. This is when the Hemeti made the order, the head of the RSF made the order that no footage is to come out of El-Fasher for the remainder of the annihilation campaign. And if any fighter is broadcast their footage, they will be killed. And so this is why we only see footage from that first 2 to 3 days of this campaign. What happened in the last 2 days? Yale Humanitarian Research Lab analyzes satellite footage, and they analyze this in a minute-to-minute analysis throughout this 5-day span, and they put out reports daily on what they were seeing. And what they were seeing was blood that was seen from space, that massacres where such a large amount of people were being executed at once, that the blood could be seen from satellite imagery. Bodies were stacked, and you can see outside of major areas of refuge, like hospitals, like schools, that is where the bodies were stacked. And then in the last 2 days, they saw no movement throughout the city. And they saw the bodies that were stacked outside of these hospitals, outside of these schools, where they were doing these mass graves. They were burning them inside the trenches that the RSF created in the beginnings of the El-Fasher siege, in order, the trenches that I was mentioning, the physical borders. So they put all of the bodies in the trenches. They put as many bodies as they could in the trenches, and they burned these bodies. And this is what Yale continues to document, the burning of the bodies, because they're trying to, Hemeti is now attempting to now that there's this international campaign that has eyes on what the RSF is doing, Hemeti is now backtracking to say that, one, this was not ordered, that there were just kind of rogue fighters that went into El-Fasher to do this, although he himself stated he would do this a year ago. There was one commander in particular named Al-Hilu, and he was in many of the videos with atrocities. And so they did this PR stunt where they put him in a jail cell, and then stated that we've jailed the main commander that made the orders for these massacres, and actually the massacres were only about 5,000 to 7,000 people. That's what the RSF is claiming, and that's why they're burning the bodies now. They're trying to burn the evidence of the scale of the massacres that they have committed, and they're also saying that so we got most of we had a humanitarian corridor, and we got most of the civilians out, but Yale Humanitarian Research Lab shows no such evidence that there was any mass a migration of civilians. The evidence only confirms that most of the 250,000 civilians were killed in El-Fasher. And so that's the situation that we are in now. What the RSF is going to do next is target Al Ubaid in North Kordofan. And as long as they're not stopped, they will continue this annihilation campaign. They have stated as such. The commanders stated that now that we have taken over El-Fasher, we have the West, we're going to go to Al Ubaid. We're going to not only go to Al Ubaid and other Western regions, we're coming back to Khartoum, we're coming to Durman, we're coming to Jazeera, and we're going to do this. We're going to kill every last one of you, and we're going to rape every woman until you are gone. This is what the commanders of the RSF have publicly stated. So the intent, the genocidal intent, has been shown. Their actions are now beyond defy comprehension. The scale at which they are committing these massacres, and they will not stop. They have proven as much, and the UAE will continue to increase the arms flow as they did right before the El-Fasher, the annihilation of El-Fasher. The UAE sent in most of the weapons to make this happen. There was an extremely large tons shipment from the UAE of weapons and for the takeover of El-Fasher. And what is the UAE now doing? The UAE is on full force within its PR campaign to state that the army and the Sudanese state is a terrorist entity, that it's associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, and this claim of fighting Islamism is the UAE's claim now, that we have to ramp up actually our fight against the Sudanese state because we're fighting this Islamism threat, which is just rich coming from the UAE. But I want to emphasize what the U.S. is doing now, because it's similar to what a lot of the international community is doing, unfortunately, and it's condemning. It's giving empty condemnations of what has happened because they're facing all of this pressure from their fellow statesmen and congresspeople, and they're giving these empty condemnations, saying that we condemn what has happened, and maybe even acknowledging that the RSF is a genocidal force and but not acknowledging that it is an illegitimate force, that it is a militia that does not have any claim to any land or over any civilians, and thus they are treating the RSF as a diplomatic entity instead of what. So the State Department, the U.S. State Department, and Rubio have come out and said, this is happening, and instead of confronting the main demand of the Sudanese people and the diaspora, that is the call of a UAE arms embargo for the U.S. to stop sending arms to the UAE, because this is what's making this possible. And there's been ample evidence that has come out since we even last spoke about not only the UAE being being the chief arms provider, but being the operational hub for the RSF, and in fact giving direct coordination and orders. And so the UAE's role here is one of orchestrating this genocide. And the demand has been for the US to stop sending arms to the UAE. Instead of meeting this demand or confronting this demand, the US State Department and Trump's administration are trying to deflect by giving an alternate demand of ceasefire and of peace talks. And this is what is one thing that, so every around ceasefire. Every agreement, ceasefire agreement that the RSF has entered into, they have immediately broken. They are not a diplomatic entity that will engage with some type of cessation of violence. It is a genocidal militia that only has its power due to its violence, and so it will not engage meaningfully in any type of ceasefire effort, regardless of even that the ceasefire does not confront the RSF's illegal occupation of land and hold the RSF accountable for their genocide. But nonetheless, this is an ineffective demand. But the RSF, two things that the RSF did in the midst of its genocidal campaign in El-Fasher, that the U.S. really had a key hand in helping to orchestrate, is that they announced a ceasefire immediately after massacring all of the population of El-Fasher. So after this 5-day period, they said we're in a ceasefire now, and a day after that ceasefire agreement was announced by the RSF, they bombed and sent drone strikes to Al Ubaid, to Durman, and to Deling, and other areas. They also attacked a camp for internally displaced right outside of Al Ubaid, with the intent that they will do the same thing that they have done in Al-Fasher to Al Ubaid. Al Ubaid is, of course, the largest city in North Kordofan, so that's their next, where they intend to take over next. And so within a day of this, so we understand that the ceasefire agreement that was announced by the RSF was a PR stunt that many Western media sources happily picked up. And in fact, I wrote for the New York Times at this time. I wrote a piece on what was happening in it, what had just happened in El-Fasher. And I was asked by the editors of the New York Times, can you add a line about the RSF ceasefire? I heard there was a ceasefire and the army isn't agreeing to the ceasefire, but the RSF did put this agreement out, and they've announced a truce. And I just immediately, where are these journalists? Where I'm confused, because where are they getting their headlines from and their news from? Because this is blatant RSF propaganda, that there is a ceasefire and that there was a ceasefire and that the army did not agree to the ceasefire. And so this is like just provides such a diplomatic cover to what they just did and what they have continued to do. So the calls and claims of ceasefire are meaningless, and anything less than an arms embargo coming from the US is blatant complicity in genocide at this point, now that they have full evidence, knowledge, and acknowledgement of what the RSF is doing and what the UAE is doing. And then the peace talks. So like you mentioned, in the midst of the RSF annihilation campaign of El-Fasher, the number 2 in command of the RSF, Algoni Dagalo, was invited into the US and was hosted in Washington, D.C. And this is significant for many reasons, but he was given a special diplomatic visa for peace talks in the US. And so this just lays bare the absurdity and the how wrong it is to call for a peace talk with the RSF, and of course with the UAE, which the US has always consistently brought in the UAE to helm its peace talks. The peace talk kind of arrangement has been posed as an alternative to an arms embargo, and the calls for a ceasefire has been posed as an alternative, and this is the way that the U.S. has been able to deflect calls for a arms embargo and demands for an arms embargo, because the U.S. not only shouldn't just do this out of the goodness of their heart. This is illegal under international law and under domestic law for them to continue to provide arms to this regime that is that is orchestrating the genocide in Sudan. So we have to make this very clear that we don't only want this is their obligations, and we cannot back down from that demand. Those currently calling for ceasefire and for peace talks must understand that this completely undermines actual accountability, actual change and meeting of obligations.
Wow. And wait. You said, so let's go back a bit to the deaths. How many deaths? Like, what's the number now? There's a number you said.
So again, there's no way to officially document this on the ground because the RSF is not letting anyone in. There's no more footage coming out of El-Fasher, so we cannot, video analysis is no longer possible, especially for that last 3 to 2 days of the massacres where the bulk of the executions happened. So what we're relying on for the death count is Yale Humanitarian Research Lab's satellite imagery evidence. And that imagery shows that there is no living soul, there's no movement in El-Fasher. And so given the numbers of civilians who were there prior to this 5-day period, and at the end of this 5-day period, all civilians, the bulk of the civilians at least, have been killed in El-Fasher. And that is 250,000 people.
That's the number that's the number I heard. You mean to tell me 200, they cleared a whole location, and nobody is talking about this? 250,000.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I don't know. I guess since this has happened, my faith in humanity has dropped significantly, because it doesn't seem to strike a chord. I don't see like large, demonstrations and levels of care around this. And I think part of it has to do with just comprehending the level of scale of what the RSF has done, which were only shown that by the few videos that the fighters have put out. But I think a lot of it is just, I don't feel people will care until it comes to their doorstep. But I want people to understand that it's already come to their doorstep, that the RSF is in a track to take over an entire country. This was once the largest country in Africa, and once they have done this, and already still they will not stop at Sudan. They will continue to expand, and this will set, what kind of precedent will this set? That a militia orchestrated by a foreign entity can come in, take over a country, annihilate its people, replace its population, extract its resources in levels that that never before seen. What kind of precedent will this set for global politics and relations? I think the African Union that you mentioned in your message to me around the African Union stance is extremely absurd. That and the AU has adopted this kind of a similar stance as the US, that this kind of mediation position, treating the conflict as a dispute between two equal internal actors rather than an externally backed militia invading and annihilating civilians, carrying out mass atrocities, and illegally occupying land. The AU has done this by including not only RSF representatives in its meetings, but also UAE officials in these meetings, which the sister at Reading Africana pointed out just how absurd that is. Why is a Gulf country responsible for genocide of an African nation in AU meetings? And why is it able to partner with the AU and have a say on what it's doing in the very country that it's orchestrating genocide within? The AU's position is not only extremely disappointing, but it's absurd, because this is a threat to the entirety of the African continent, and it contradicts all of the AU's stated positions and writings and articles. So this is and it has definitely not pushed for any type of arms embargo on the UAE, which it can and immediately should do. But not only that, but it's including the UAE in its decision-making processes around Sudan, and not only Sudan, but other around conflicts within other countries. Like the UAE is involved deeply in Congo, in the extraction of minerals in Congo. So it's the AU is actively complicit in legitimizing the RSF and in of helping the UAE to dodge accountability for what it's doing in Sudan.
It's crazy. Why is the UAE in the meeting and they're the ones who are orchestrating this war? It's insane. But look, I'm still stuck on the 250. I mean, like, a whole location being wiped out, and you say the satellite footage showing that there's no movement in El-Fasher. It's insane. Like, this should be treated with all seriousness, and I'm disappointed in major African media houses for not taking this seriously. I'm disappointed in African leaders. Some of them we know that they are also a part of this. I'm disappointed. I'm just, at this point, Suad, I'm just disappointed. And there's something I want to tell you, Suad, about the UAE and Kenya right now. So there's a gold company called Shanta Gold Company. They've discovered gold in Western Kenya, and they want to start mining. So they want 337 acres of land to mine the gold, which is going to displace 800 households in that location. And knowing Kenya, I know now they're saying that, oh, we will place them responsibly, but knowing this country, many of them are not going. Many of them are going to remain homeless. So when I dug deep into this Shanta Gold Company, it's a British company that is a subsidiary of a company that is a subsidiary of ETC Holdings, which is a UAE investment company. So UAE is actually now in my backyard now. UAE now has extended its greedy hands into Western Kenya, and they will, of course, they're taking the lion's share while we are remaining with the leftovers of the gold. So that's how it is here, and it just goes to show you that, when we say boycott UAE, we're not only meaning boycott UAE for Sudan, but for the whole of Africa, because UAE is extending its greedy hands all over Africa, including Kenya. So it's crazy. It's crazy.
That's right. Yeah, and the UAE will not stop until it has dug its hands and its investments in every African country. I want to announce that we have a partnership with multiple boycott apps, including the No Thanks app, where that's rolling out, inshallah, this God willing, this week. That is a comprehensive consumer boycott of the UAE, and it is a very comprehensive list, strategic list that many organizers have and investigators have put together. So I hope that your audience downloads the No Thanks app and engages with this formal boycott of the UAE. And of course, wherever you are, you should be calling for a UAE arms embargo. Your country likely has arms deals with the UAE call for a cutting of these arms. The U.S. of course has the largest share of these arms, is the main exporter to the UAE and the main defense partner to the UAE. So those in the U.S. especially should be demanding that their own tax dollars should not be going to these weapons. This is very important at this time, especially when the U.S. is attempting to deflect its role in providing weapons by calling for ceasefire and for peace, for so-called peace. So please be aware of those of that deflection.
Well, before you give your last word, Suad, because I know you have to go. So the because UAE doesn't produce, like doesn't make weapons. I mean, so of course the US is the main supplier, and it just and the fact that the deputy of the RSF can be able to have meetings in America, and I saw you outside the building protesting that day. I mean, there's no rocket science. US is a part of this,
Exactly.
and they're benefiting off of this. And I think for me, I just want to say that we just have to keep on applying the pressure. We just have to keep on applying the pressure. Boycott UAE, boycott anything the UAE produces. I was telling Ahmed all this Grand Prix and all this Formula One that's happening in Abu Dhabi. Screw them. Screw Formula One. I mean, like, you don't have to watch Formula One. Screw that. Whatever UAE produces and whatever UAE profits off, cut them off. We need to cut the UAE off of the economic order. But sorry, Suad, before you give your last word, is there a bill? Is there a bill or is there some legislature in, I think, Congress or Senate about this Sudan issue?
Yeah, there's both bills in both the House and the Senate in the U.S. Congress that are currently being pushed. We need now more than ever pressure on Congress people to be supporting these bills and to be the set of bills and to be pushing them. It is a bill explicitly for a UAE arms embargo. So the U.S. State Department, it would prohibit the U.S. State Department from exporting arms to the UAE whilst it is still contingent upon its support of the RSF. So there's a campaign that the CARE and other organizations put together, and the link for that is bit.ly/sanctionrsf, bit.ly/sanctionrsf, and that has a message that's already been loaded for you, and it will automatically send to your representatives and your Congress people. So I hope that you'll press your Congress people now more than ever, if you are in the U.S., to cut the flow of arms, and demand that your own tax dollars cannot go into this genocide. I wanted to mention something else. Manchester City is also that's Abu Dhabi owned. That's owned by the UAE. And there's a whole NBA campaign to pressure the NBA to cut ties with the UAE, and there's an organization called Refugees International that has a petition around that and has organized a lot of larger human rights organizations around that campaign to press the NBA to cut ties. Because some of these, when we're talking about the private actors like Disney and the NBA, they're more vulnerable to social pressure, and so there's multiple campaigns around both Disney and with the NBA to cut ties with the UAE. So again, our comprehensive boycott campaign and list is coming out via the No Thanks app this week, so that I hope that your listeners will download the app and be able to engage with the UAE boycott through through that list. Any other things that I wanted to mention? I I think now there's a lot of need for fundraising for those in Darfur, especially at this time, especially those in Tawila who had previously fled the RSF from El-Fasher. There's extreme amounts of internally displaced people in Tawila who are really needing assistance, and there's a campaign that we put together with Darfur Women Network, and there's also a campaign by Doctors Against Genocide that we've linked on our website, decolonizesudan.org. If any listeners want to contribute to the humanitarian aid and mutual aid, that's there. And thank you again, Orina. Thank you for platforming Sudan and having humanity and a heart around these issues, because it seems in a time when it seems that there's not a lot of empathy around what's happening. But like you said, the UAE is not only coming for Sudan; it's come for many other countries, and it will. Its goal is to become an empire. Right now, it's a sub-empire, and its goal is to be able to expand its theft of resources to the point in which it can be a full-fledged empire and kind of dominate the Gulf region. And so it must be stopped. And I think there's now at least a lot of awareness of the UAE's role. So we have to increase that awareness, increase that pressure.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Suad. You want to give your final word, or that was your final word?
That's all. I have nothing more to say, but just want to thank you again for having me.
Thank you so much. Come back again. Let's be doing this periodically because we need more updates on Sudan. The mainstream media is not putting a lot of pressure on this, but that's where thank God, that's where you have channels like Sell Africa to Africans that are pushing stories that, African stories and global African stories all over the world that people are not talking about. Because I've realized one thing: Black life is not respected. Nobody cares about Black life. A couple of Ukrainians and Palestinians die, and the whole world is in a frenzy. But a whole location is being wiped out, almost 250,000 people dead, and nobody talks about it. But it's okay. That's where you have platforms like Sell Africa to Africans. And let's do our part. Suad, you're doing your part. You're doing your activism part. I'm doing my part, showcasing and putting more pressure on my channel, Sell Africa to Africans. And I challenge every single Black person in this world, in Africa and outside of Africa. If you have a channel, I don't care if it's a lifestyle channel. I don't care if it's I don't care the niche that your channel is in. Spend some time to talk about, to showcase what's happening in Sudan, to showcase what's happening in Congo and Somalia. For once, just for once, change. I'm not saying you change your content, but for once, just sometimes, I'm not saying all the times, just sometimes talk about your people because it matters. We are one and it matters. So let's all do our part. Musicians, do your part. Actors, do your part. Do your part. Let everybody do their part. Let everybody do their parts in their respective areas of expertise, because we need to be. Suad, I think that's how we can greatly impact what's happening in Sudan, by everybody doing their part, using their different talents and their expertise to help Sudan. And so thank you so much, Suad. Please come again. Please come again. Free Sudan, free Sudan.
Thank you, bro. Free Sudan. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.